If you're enjoying White Devil, follow Campside Media for more thrilling investigative series like Suspect, Chameleon, Witnessed, and Hooked. Just go to campsidemedia.com/join. That's campsidemedia.com/JOIN.
Campside Media.
This is White Devil. Please do enjoy.
Andrew Ashcroft's comfortable lifestyle in Turks and Caicos obviously provides a pretty stark contrast to Jasmine Harton's situation back in Belize. He had the kids, the money, the staff, plus some new business ventures to dabble in. But as far as Jasmine had come from her childhood on a farm, as much as she'd accomplished, maybe it's not so surprising that her path would end up being the rockier one. Andrew was born into extreme privilege. Jasmine was born into real life. Her family did not grow up having high tea at the Ritz. Candace, her mom, would be the first to tell you this. She's seen it all, and she'd been there for Jasmine through the whole ordeal. A shoulder to lean on, agonizing right alongside her. It's got to be tough having a daughter in that much trouble. But you know what's worse? Having two daughters in that much trouble. Because back in Canada, Jasmine's sister Jacinta was having all kinds of legal issues of her own.
I guess she had received a package and she was holding it for somebody, and then they raided the house and she didn't even know what was fully in the bag. But I guess the bag was full of fentanyl, cocaine, ecstasy, Oxycontins, Valium, like just everything you could possibly think of. Speed, methamphetamine, crack, like everything.
Jacinta's 3 years older than Jasmine, and she's struggled with addiction in the past. But Jasmine told me she'd been clean for 15 years before falling in with an old crowd, and especially the wrong dude. She first popped onto my radar in the fall of 2021 when I saw a headline about her arrest that September. She was brought up on charges of coke, meth, and Ritalin possession with intent to distribute. That's not where Jacinta's story ended, though.
She was on the run for, I guess, a couple months. There was a warrant, and then she did some kind of high-speed chase. I don't know all the details, but she evaded the police, and then they just busted her at a checkpoint on Canada Day. So she got arrested July 1st, and I think she's going to be in for a very long time.
This was some serious shit, and ongoing. The drugs charge was from 2021, but the second arrest, that's from 2022.
She was on her way to killing herself. I heard she was smoking crack and then also doing needles. And she was just going days and days without sleep, like I think even weeks. Like she was really bad. So she would have killed herself by overdose. And I guess she did overdose. Someone told me a couple days before she was arrested, they had to give her a shot of Narcan to bring her back to life. So if she didn't get arrested when she did, she would have died.
Jasmine is a master compartmentalizer. She's constantly building and rebuilding walls in her mind as a kind of self-preservation ritual, I think. And as she told me this story, I could feel her almost hardening in real time. It often feels like she's refusing to show vulnerability, as if the slightest sign of weakness could cause the entire delicate edifice that was holding her up to collapse. Her mom, of course, was torn up about all of it. Two daughters, both in terrible situations. Not a lot of reason for hope in either case. And Jasmine was sympathetic about this, to a point.
Yeah, so my mom has a lot on her plate, I think, which is why she cries all the time, but I can't deal with it. It's not that I'm being unsympathetic, like, I feel really bad for my mom, but I have to stay strong right now.
From Campside Media, this is White Devil, and I'm Josh Dean. Episode 9, Welcome to the Jungle.
Hello?
Oh, sorry, did I wake you up?
No, I wasn't actually sleeping. I was just laying down playing a wood puzzle game. It's fine.
Well, there were a few periods after our trip to Belize when Jasmine and I were speaking at least every few days, The periods between those calls got longer as the summer went on, and it had become harder to catch each other in the ebb and flow of our daily lives. When we finally got a chance to have a full conversation, she seemed jumpy, spooked even. And there was something else different, too. It didn't sound like she was home.
Are you on Cocker? Are you at the house?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. I got a call on Friday from a friend that was very concerned. He was extremely adamant that they are going to try to kill me.
This I was not expecting. Her fear, her paranoia, was reaching new heights, but it wasn't coming out of nowhere.
He felt so strongly about it that he drove 2 hours to Belize City, jumped on a flight, and came to Campside to bring me 2 new cell phones, a couple grand in cash. For some reason, he had a bug detector to see if your house is bugged. He has spy cams, all of this stuff. He said he's helped witnesses, like people in the past, so I don't know if he's ex-CIA or what his deal is. But he then strongly advised that I leave the island because I'm a sitting duck there.
So Jasmine decided she had to move, based on intel from this source whose identity she wouldn't reveal. And that wasn't it.
And then Saturday night, I got a call
From a different trusted source, someone who'd been close to her and her family for a long time.
He's like, you're not safe. And he said that it's too bad they're going to use Lionel.
Lionel Neal, she means. Piggy. That's the guy who accused her of planning to kill Chester Williams and Dale Cayetano.
They're going to set him up to take the fall.
Wait.
They're going to try to make it look like either a suicide or a murder-suicide, and they're going to pin it on Lionel.
Jasmine had also heard from him, Lionel.
He sent me a message, and he's like, they're going to try to kill me, and before I die, I have to tell you what they're planning on you. And I was like, okay, I'm not even talking to you. You're a psycho.
Considering what happened with the fake hits on Dale Cayetano and Chester Williams, Jasmine was highly skeptical of anything Lionel said. But his mom also started calling and texting her incessantly around this time, in fear for her son's safety. I've seen the texts. They indeed want you dead, one of them says. Another reads, my son needs help. These people will kill him. The woman seemed legitimately terrified for both Jasmine and Lionel.
And do you have any idea where he is?
All I know is when I was on my Zoom call yesterday for court, and he kept calling me while I was on the Zoom call. So he's frantically trying to get a hold of me for some reason.
Important point here. Jasmine was no longer using her regular phone, the one she'd been using for as long as we'd been chatting. She distrusted basically everyone at this point, so worried that her communications were being monitored that she was alternating between 2 different burners. Phones that she, at least for a short while, had kept wrapped in tinfoil when she wasn't using them. And she certainly wasn't wasting her burner minutes on Lionel.
I have nothing more to say to him. But he messaged my brother, my little brother, on Facebook, and he said to him, your sister needs to get out of Belize. There's a lot more to it. They're trying to set her up. But I think he might be just trying to lure me out.
Lionel, fortunately, wasn't killed or dragged any further into a plot. Still, Jasmine was trusting basically no one, but she was at least managing to have a sense of humor about it.
My friend sent me a wig. You'll laugh. Yeah, I have a wig and sunglasses that I'm wearing. I'm not even kidding. And we just ordered $1,000 worth of more wigs.
I mean, maybe didn't need quite that many.
No, we all got wines. We're going to make, it's going to be fun. Anyway.
In addition to the foil-covered phones and the disguises, she had relocated to a place very far from her previous spot on Key Caulker, to a house deep in the jungle, near Belmopan.
It is nice being away from the island, so I'm feeling like a lot calmer. It's exactly what I needed.
How'd she end up out there? Funny thing. Yet another random woman came out of nowhere to help her.
My name is Louisa Chiaramonte, and I'm a Canadian living in Belize for 8 years.
Louisa is the owner of a large remote property. Many acres with a tropical fruit farm, chickens, an elaborate shelter of sorts for stray cats, and a series of small structures with plenty of room for Jasmine and her mom. The accommodations were nice, simple but well-built, with a large outdoor kitchen and just one minor inconvenience. There was no indoor toilet. But they did have the nicest outhouse I've ever seen, with a beautiful view of the jungle. Louisa's in her 50s and divorced. She first came to Belize and ran a coffee shop out on San Pedro. But a few years back, she moved to the jungle, and that's where she was, living alone with a bunch of rescue dogs when the new guests arrived. And not just dogs and cats. It was a regular Noah's Ark out there in the jungle.
Cats, goats, ducks and turkeys and chickens and sheep and jaguars, wild boars, tapirs or tapirs, however you pronounce it, ocelots, possums, you name it. We got it. Yeah.
Louisa is also Canadian, but she's not an old friend of the family. In fact, Louisa hadn't known Jasmine for long at all. They'd barely met before the shooting and all the subsequent drama, but they'd become close since. Close enough that Louisa offered to take Jasmine and Candace in when things got too scary for them on Keycocker.
I was semi-retired for a few years and started a small coffee shop on the island of Ambergris, San Pedro. I also just dabbled in some crafts and things that I would sell at the market. And that's how I came to know of Andrew Ashcroft first, prior to knowing Jasmine. And didn't develop a personal relationship, just observed him as a person in the same space.
Just two white expats hanging around San Pedro.
And then he got involved with my daughter. It was a very casual thing, so casual that you can't call it an affair. They partied a few times, so that it was brief.
Here's what actually happened, according to Mia, that daughter. She was living in Belize at the time and working with her mom at the market. And one day, some dude tried to chat her up. Andrew Ashcroft.
He was like, "What are you doing later today? There's a pool party going on. Would you like to come?" And I thought to myself, well, this is a great way to meet people, so why not? So I said, okay, yeah, sure.
Mia says that he gave off bad vibes, but what was the harm in hitting a party? She went home to put on her bathing suit and a coverall, and a few hours later, Andrew picked her up in an ATV. The destination was not a pool party.
And he brought me to a beach, and it was just the two of us, and I was like, okay, like, I see what's going on here, like, you know, very uncomfortable situation. He had brought a bunch of champagne.
Mia says she asked him if he had a partner, and he said yes, but no, because they'd split. In fact, she was back in Canada now with the kids.
I just remember the whole interaction. I was so disgusted and uncomfortable, and I was just like, this guy is such a loser in my mind. Like, I still didn't really know who he was, but I just knew he was some rich, drunk guy that is tricking me to get me alone.
So that was pretty much Louisa's impression of Andrew, too. She says she didn't know anything about his father or the Ashcroft family prior to this.
I had no idea. I did have to Google it because everybody was making such a big deal, too, that Lord Michael Ashcroft had come into my coffee shop. And I was like, who the heck's Lord Michael Ashcroft? You know, looks like the guy in a pink polo shirt. So that was that.
She didn't think about him again until Mia told her about the interaction with his son.
And then, of course, I did caution my daughter when I found out who they were and the fact that he had a wife and they had just had babies. And that was that. I mean, she really was not smitten with him at all. She was, in fact, quite repulsed by him. She told me, quite frankly, she was using him for his vape pen because she couldn't get one on the island.
She means for weed. A special vape pen for weed.
It's funny because that is really the only reason that I continued to talk to this guy was because he had this vape pen. It was the first vape pen I had ever seen of this kind. So, of course, I messaged him again. I'm like, can I get another one? And he was just at the resort up the way. And, he told me I could come up and grab it. And I went up, and there were children's toys and things like that. I remember being very confused, being like, I thought you told me that your wife had left to Canada, and then I saw the things there, and I was like, yeah, this guy, like, he can't be trusted, you know? It was just like, I cannot wait to leave, but thanks for the vape pen.
We put this to Andrew, who denied that he, quote, courted Mia. He also denied any impropriety regarding their interactions. This generous woman in the jungle, Louisa, didn't know Jasmine Harton during the period when both of them were living amidst the tourist throngs on San Pedro. She thinks they met only once.
I met Jasmine briefly when she bought a few products from me. We didn't know each other at all until well after the accident happened. Through the news, I learned about her plight in custody court. With the first round of reports that came out, my impressions were much like many people. Oh, there's got to be something going on here. Oh, she must have been defending herself. He must have come on to her. I mean, I had all those same thoughts that everybody did. But it didn't take long for me to kind of see through it.
Like Wendy and Audrey, two other strangers who came to Jasmine's aid, Louisa was moved by this part of the story. So she, like them, reached out to help this random woman because of a sense of justice. She saw a woman, a mother, in what looked to her like a very precarious position, vulnerable and probably feeling very alone.
I just knew that Jasmine needed help. I just knew that she was in a really difficult spot and that nobody would have the courage to speak for her in a court of law against the Ashcrofts. And since I had observed Andrew publicly intoxicated on probably a dozen occasions before 10 a.m. in the morning.
For the record, Andrew denies what his attorney called this, quote, generalized smear about his public drinking.
I decided that the right thing to do was to offer my testimony because I knew that absolutely nobody in this country would stand up for Jasmine. And I was right. I mean, she had a lot of friends who turned their backs on her out of fear of losing their jobs. So I basically contacted her sister through a GoFundMe campaign and I offered my testimony.
Weirdly, that's exactly how Wendy got in touch with Jasmine. Again, Facebook matters here. Back in court, Andrew trotted out his own crew of character witnesses, though a better description would be character assassins. 3 of the 4 were nannies, employees. And one of the most puzzling of these was Diane Davidson, the Canadian mother of an old boyfriend of Jasmine's, who'd stayed close and started working for her as a nanny after the kids were born. Tragic footnote here. That boyfriend was killed in a car accident on icy roads 15 years ago. It's a really sad story that no one in Belize would even know had it not surprisingly resurfaced in the press in the wake of news of Henry Jamont's death.
And then they start calling me a Black Widow. I was like, if the only people privy to that information are Andrew and Diane. So the source is Andrew. Like, he's just feeding his news network whatever he wants and making them run with it. The fact that they brought that up, I just think was really tacky and gross. I mean, to bring up a tragedy from 2007, that was not a violent crime. I was not there when he passed away. It was a car accident. But it just shows like they're just rubbing salt on the wound and just really trying to bash me.
Andrew denies this. In fact, he claimed to not even know the name of Jasmine's former partner. Anyway, Louisa knew that Andrew had a team of witnesses, many of them people he already employed, to lay siege on Jasmine's character. And that's why Louisa felt like she needed to show up in court. She wanted to make sure that somebody was there to bolster Jasmine's version of events. That much of what Andrew claimed about her was actually a kind of projection.
He's publicly intoxicated constantly. None of that's a surprise to anybody on the island. But will anybody have the guts to say it? Absolutely not.
Hearsay, I know. But we do know about the DUI and the plane arrest. Probably safe to assume those were not just unlucky breaks the 2 times he got drunk.
I saw quite clearly the danger in the situation her and her mother were in and how vulnerable they were. And so I just stuck by them from that day forward. And it just evolved from there.
Also, like Wendy and Audrey, Louisa saw something of herself in Jasmine. She was informed by her own experience and the horrible tragedy she had just gone through.
I had just lost a son to suicide, and I was very aware of what, an acrimonious split can do to 2 young children. And I just thought about her child. I really did.
Louisa's son, Michael, had come to Belize to help her build her compound and had stayed on to live in a yurt out in the fruit fields across the river from her house. It was Louisa who found his body in that yurt. He'd hung himself.
I just related very much to my own situation, and I just thought, I just don't want this for her kids. Somebody's got to stand up. Wendy's got her stories too. So, I think that we identify her with her in that way, as well as we understand all too well the corruption here in Belize.
Louisa is an empathetic soul. She has 8 dogs, all rescues, down from 18 at one point. The reason she cut back? It's horrifying.
I got attacked by a pit bull after my son passed as well. I was almost mauled within inches of my life, so I was 6 months in recovery. He was my last rescue that I brought in, and he was rescued from the fight life here in Belize, the pit bull fighting life. So that was another tragedy. I'm lucky to be alive. You know, I'm lucky to be walking. Yeah, I've got enough on my plate. So I stopped rescuing.
Well, she stopped rescuing dogs anyway.
White Devil will return just after this.
This is the moment.
The Bachelorette is back. And the power
I'm gonna fall in love,
is in Jen's hands.
and I'm gonna do it my way.
ABC tonight.
Everything about her is great.
I feel so special.
Jen's looking like a queen.
My men are very, very hot.
Someone call 911. You are looking so fire.
This is the beginning of a new era.
The Bachelorette. All new tonight, 8/7 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
So, Robert, tell the people, what's a pretendian?
It's just what it sounds like, Angel. A pretend Indian.
Pocahontas, she of the great tribal heritage. What tribe is it? Let me think about that one.
Someone who fakes being one of us?
Pretend Indians are all over the damn place. You can't get away from them.
Someone who impersonates a native.
And we're not talking about the college girl who wears a feather headband to a Halloween party.
No.
We're talking about real scammers and con artists.
My 6 children with blonde hair and blue eyes, they all have their Indian card.
There are pretendians teaching at universities, pretendians running governments, pretendians in Hollywood.
For years, Danielle Smith has claimed that she has indigenous heritage.
On our new podcast, Pretendians, we'll tell you the incredible story of these jaw-dropping frauds.
The people that don't believe I'm native, they can kiss my Indian ass.
Who are they? Why do they do it? And how the heck do they keep getting away with it?
Listen to Pretendians on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to White Devil from Campside Media.
Louisa didn't just take Jasmine and Candace in and become a friend. She became a proactive fighter in Jasmine's various battles, for custody and especially in the media war for her reputation.
I hate injustice. I really do. I've always been like that, a kind of a defender of the underdog in whatever small way I could be. This just happened to cross my path, and it's a bit of a bigger way. But, normally it's like a stray dog or something like that, a guy that needs a bed for 2 nights. But this is a bit different. But no, it's a no-brainer. I couldn't look away. Knowing what I know and knowing how alone they are.
Even before Jasmine moved out to the jungle and into her home, Louisa was helping Jasmine financially, quietly, behind the scenes.
I basically helped her with her PR campaign.
Louisa, who owns a small ad agency in Canada, even hired a UK firm that came with a large monthly retainer to help combat the superior firepower of Andrew's team.
If she ever gets her money, she'll pay it back. And if not, we'll write it off as a loss. But that's basically how I've been able to help her financially, is through my agency and my media contacts.
It didn't take long to see this professional PR at work.
My name is Jasmine Harton. I'm a Canadian citizen living in Belize. I was involved in a terrible accident last May that resulted in the death of my friend.
In early July, Jasmine recorded this message for one very important person, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and it was posted on the website of the Toronto Sun.
I've been harassed. I've been threatened. I've been told that I'm not safe if I remain in this country. The whereabouts of my children are unknown. I'm asking the Canadian government to please help me to ensure that I have a fair trial, an ethical investigation into this incident, and to please help me get home, to be reunited with my children, and to allow me to return back to Canada.
It was an extremely optimistic request for direct intervention, and Jasmine surely knew that it was the longest of shots. But the video, which ran the same day as a news story about Harton in the Toronto Sun, had another purpose. It was part of a new and very purposeful campaign to build her support base outside Belize. and hopefully to draw higher wattage attention to the injustice she felt she was facing. This attention from the public and from institutions outside of Belize was probably her best hope for protection, and for getting some help in the case to win back custody of her kids. Harton also sat for her first major UK print interview with the Times of London. And then there was the big one. Jasmine was booked to appear live on Piers Morgan's talk show. It did not go super well.
To some, she's a cocaine-using party girl embroiled in an affair with the cop she shot dead. What are they doing alone on the dock at midnight? You are familiar with guns. I mean, you look like you know what you're doing. See, just listening to what you've just said in response to two questions, they don't fire themselves. There's an immediate contradiction, apparent inconsistencies in your public statements.
I can clarify that very easily.
Do your own family believe you? What is indisputable is that you fired the gun which killed this man. That's indisputable, isn't it?
Louisa said that what Piers told them before the interview and what actually happened were two very different things.
He said he was sympathetic to Jasmine's cause and that he would discuss the things that we wanted to discuss, and then he ambushed her.
Ambush may be overstating things a bit. Morgan asked hard questions, which is a thing journalists do, especially tabloid journalists like him. But he seemed more interested in sensational questions. He had little interest in her version, where she compared this accidental death to one that could have happened in a car crash.
Well, because ultimately it comes down to whether people believe your version of events. And there's obviously no correlation between a car and somebody firing a gun at point-blank range and shooting somebody in the head dead. I mean, there's no comparison.
I heard from her right away after the taping.
The interview with Piers was brutal. He was basically attacking me. I handled him very well, but I did not get my points across that I wanted to get across.
Jasmine's hope was that Morgan would expose the absurdity of her case and help her win back some influence, especially toward getting her kids back. Instead, Morgan hammered the story's most tabloidy elements, rumors about her party lifestyle and her familiarity with guns.
But there were those who don't believe you, who think you should probably not come out of prison for a very long time.
It's a fairly uncomfortable interview to watch, and Morgan was certainly on the warpath. It's far from the kind of thing any good PR rep would want to see from an embattled client fighting a public opinion war. But all told, I actually think Jasmine did okay. She held her own.
I'm literally trapped in a big unfair game, which is ironic because that's Michael's book.
Ashcroft, she means. The book was about the cruelty of sport hunting lions. Just to be clear, Lord Ashcroft was on the side of the lions.
Captive lions are tranquilized and then hunted. And I said, I can relate to those lions. I said, I feel like I'm captive in Belize, tranquilized by a government that's corrupt. I said, I'm tranquilized with corruption and financial abuse. I said, my hands are tied behind my back and being punched in the face, fighting an uphill, unfair battle in the hunting ground of Michael.
It's a fair analogy, whether Piers bought it or not.
I mean, all of that may be true, as far as I have no idea.
It's such a small country. Everybody's terrified of them. They own the bank. They own the newspapers. They own the economy of this country. The commissioner's their best friend. The prime minister stays at Alaya Hotel in San Pedro.
Comments across social media were mixed. Plenty of people took Morgan's side and doubted Harton's story. Others found her to be credible, like these guys.
Talk about Jasmine Harton, and we got some great video. We're really back in our wheelhouse because we've got somebody who's being accused of something and they're swearing up and down they didn't do it, and nobody knows for sure yet.
There's this YouTube channel called The Behavior Panel, in which 4 body language experts analyze interviews with people accused of crimes to work out if they're telling the truth. There's a full hour of scrupulous analysis of Jasmine's appearance on Piers Morgan.
Yeah, Piers Morgan, one of the greatest entertainers we've ever had out of the UK, but a very naughty boy. Very, very naughty boy. Chase, what do you got?
It's not a perfect score. They saw some signs of deception. But all in all, she comes out of it pretty well.
I'm not convinced at all that she deliberately acted in any way whatsoever to harm Henry.
These are great examples of someone being truthful, even though there's some deception in there about something else. And that's what's missing.
Some of it all was positive. On balance, the press was a good thing, even when it was bad. That was Louisa's take.
You know, her only hope, I think, is, first of all of this media attention, I think, is number one, keeping her alive and starting to turn the tables. I really do.
And it seemed to be true.
You know, we've won a bail revision, which was key, allowing her to move and change location. So we've had some small victories.
Meaning, after a series of disappointments in court, Jasmine was able to get her daily check-ins stopped. A judge told her she could switch to twice weekly check-ins, and that she could even move those check-ins to San Ignacio, much closer to where she was now, living with Louisa. He also extended Harton's curfew so she could even go out to dinner sometimes.
I really think the recent media attention has, with the shift in narrative, has accomplished that. We now have Global Affairs Canada paying very close attention. Before they were not.
Global Affairs being the branch of the Canadian government that deals with diplomatic and consular relations. So Trudeau may not have been listening, but someone was.
And they're very concerned. And they've written several letters that have gotten zero response from the Belize diplomats.
It's not a lot, but it was something. Most promising, her custody appeal was put in the hands of a new judge, a Canadian and a woman. And then, almost out of the blue, and more than 4 months after the Lionel Neal murder-for-hire allegations were born, Police Commissioner Chester Williams dropped this interview to Channel 7.
In terms of the matter with Jasmine Harton, we had investigated that matter, and we do not come up with nothing credible to show that the threat was actually made or if the threat was real.
Nothing credible to show that the threat was real. It had taken Belize's highest-ranking police officer 4 months to arrive at a conclusion that was obvious to us from day one. Jasmine Harton had not, he concluded, put out a hit on either him or Dale Cayetano, the magistrate overseeing the custody dispute. The absurdity here went mostly unnoticed, but not totally. Some reporters managed to catch Belize's former Attorney General, Michael Parafit, on the street a few days later. He had some thoughts.
I think it is a shameful day that you can bring an accusation like that against any individual, without the evidence, have that evidence be used against that individual in other court cases, only to come out after when it's too late and say, oops, sorry, we didn't have any evidence.
Jasmine was relieved to be clear of it, obviously. But also, it almost didn't matter. Small victories were barely registering, especially ones that came after months of having to defend on so many fronts.
She's honestly one of the strongest women I've ever met. She's breaking now. She's starting to break. Yesterday over the weekend when we were at the apartment packing up and she saw little Charlie's transformer in the bathtub, she just crumbled. And she was, pretty much a puddle of mush for the next 3 days, and we got nothing done because it just finally all came out. She cried for Henry's kids. She cried for her kids. She cried for everybody that day. And she's been holding it in because she's got to stay strong. And she's just that kind of person that she cries alone. But boy, oh boy, did the floodgates open this weekend. I mean, she can't, be that strong forever. I hope that this doesn't get dragged out for years.
More after the break. Jasmine comes across as very composed. But as I suggested earlier, this feels more like a coping mechanism, a way to keep her emotions under control. The more time that passed since she last saw her kids, though, which was when I was in Belize, way back in May 2022, the more her resolve began to crack a bit, at least in vulnerable moments. And it was the separation from her kids that was really eating Jasmine up. There were longer and longer periods when she wasn't even hearing from Andrew, and more important, from her kids.
You've had no correspondence at all with Andrew?
No, I've written him every single day, and he refuses to respond. I've written him, I've called him. He's not letting me talk to my kids at all. He's not even answering anything from me.
So you've not said one word to them since I picked you up at the airport that day?
Correct.
Which was over 2 months ago now.
May 21st.
That's so cruel.
I know. It's breaking me. So I'm trying really hard to, I went horseback riding and I've been trying to go to the river. I've been trying to read more books about manifesting and positive thoughts. And I'm just trying to stay mentally strong because this is a mother's worst nightmare. I was in tears yesterday, when the doctor was going through my results. And then she just looked at me and she said, are you okay? And she just had like such a look of sympathy and empathy. And I said, yep. And then I just started crying. And I just totally broke down. Like, it's emotionally hard. So she really thinks that I need to get a hobby, something that makes me happy, and I need to be mentally strong. Like, can you imagine going that long without talking to your children when you're used to being with them every day?
And it seemed to be affecting her health, too. One day, she mentioned having been to the doctor.
It's stress. Yeah, it's stress. So basically, my progesterone and like stress hormones are really high. And so it's causing cysts and like just a bunch of like bleeding, and I either have like a lot of bleeding or then I'm not bleeding at all when I'm supposed to be, and my hormones are just all over the place with stress.
Jasmine can be extremely honest, unashamed.
They counted about 8 cysts just on my left breast, and then I'm having just like a lot of abdominal pain and cystic pain like in my ovaries. Yesterday I had an ultrasound. They found like a bunch of calcifications in my uterus.
But the stress of the family drama, of having lost her 5-year-old twins, it also distracted her from another trauma, a thing she just didn't seem to be dealing with. Henry Jamat's death.
I still haven't properly mourned because I've been just hit left and right with other things, and the custody of the kids and the robbing of the shares and fearing for my life. One day when this is all over and I actually have time to grieve and process what has happened, I think I'm definitely going to have like a serious break almost. Like, I've been so strong and I've been holding it together because I have to. But as soon as this is done and I have the time that I can actually process what happened and grieve properly, it's really gonna hit me hard. I can't be this strong forever. I am scared for that day. Because at this point, it's too hard to think about it. It's just too hard.
Jasmine seems to have sealed off parts of her psyche as a kind of self-preservation. Like, she just wouldn't allow herself certain emotions. And I guess this was just her response to being under constant stress. She was terrified of being vulnerable.
The nervousness going to the station, that never goes away, because there's been times where I let my guard down and I'm like, oh, it's just another sign-in day, and then I'm arrested. So I don't trust the police here at all. So anything could really happen. But I try to stay positive and hope that nothing happens again. But because I'm doing well in my cases, that's always when the elites will go after me, right? So I'm preparing myself to be on guard extra at this point because they definitely don't want me to win anything. And I think this is when I'm most in danger and most susceptible to their games.
Even out in the jungle, on this remote compound, Jasmine felt like she was being watched. Also, weird things kept happening, like this.
So as I'm on the way to the house, I noticed the police following me. And I was like, what's going on, guys? I said, if you miss me that much, you could have just told me.
Also this, in the small town down the road.
This time I'm sitting in the car and the frigging Chinese shop owner guy comes out, stands right in front of the car, and takes pictures of my license plate while I'm sitting in the car. So what are they up to? Luckily, these are the dealer plates, and I still have the new ones I haven't put on yet, so I'm going to swap them out today. It's like covert operations, I tell you. It's insane.
One day, Jasmine told me that Louisa was sure she'd seen someone in camo gear lurking near the property, taking photographs. I chalked it up to paranoia. Possible, I guess. But who? Why? To get some photos of adopted dogs and chickens? A few days later, a news alert sent me to the website of The Sun, the infamous UK tabloid, where a series of photos appeared of Jasmine under the headline, Tory donor Lord Ashcroft's former daughter-in-law goes for a topless swim as she awaits trial over the death of a police chief. It's a lot of headline for a story that isn't actually a story.
So when it rains, we can't shower. We get the water from the river, and when it rains, it churns up all the leaves and it clogs the pump. So, like, sometimes I'd have to bathe in the river.
The Sun made it sound like Jasmine, this cop-killing socialite, was out skinny dipping without a care in the world, when really, she was just bathing. And an unreliable outdoor shower wasn't the worst of her plumbing troubles.
And then when I get to the outhouse, it's full of cockroaches and spiders. So I don't even want to go in there at night. I'm like multitasking, sitting there, but I'm like on my phone, and I felt a tickle, and I thought it was an ant, and I just kind of swatted at it. And then I felt it again, and I looked down, and it was like a 3-inch friggin' cockroach right on my inner thigh, on my private area.
Oh my God.
I freaked out. It's like Hattie'ville flashback, PTSD.
Anyway, Louisa hadn't been paranoid. Those pap shots from the river confirmed there really was a photographer lurking in the jungle.
I was clearly followed for like quite a while, so it really creeps me out that I was like stalked.
And Joe and I actually figured out who it was, or we're pretty sure anyway. We found a photo on this pap's Instagram where he's wearing full body camo, including a face mask, with the caption, "Just another day at the office. Definitely keeps the bugs away. Never saw a jaguar, but I did catch a really big fish." He posted it on September 4th, a day after the Sun story, with the topless photos hit the paper.
Like, you know that I moved because of danger, and then you're going to photograph me at my house? You know how many people know? Like, I left partially because of that. Because people knew where I lived. I was playing pool over here one night, and I said, yeah, I have to head home. And she's like, oh, the place with the green curtains? We had to take the curtains down. She knew exactly where I lived. Everyone knew exactly where I lived.
For this reason, and many others, Jasmine was still on edge pretty much all the time, despite being far from courts and cops and Ashcrofts, which was manifesting in new ways.
At the time when I was told that the police wanted me dead, that's when I decided to build a bunker.
Yep, a bunker. 10 by 10 and dug into the ground, lined with cinder blocks.
But we chose to build this across the river in case there's dogs, so they can't, like, we lose our scent in the water. The plan was to have an actual, like, a door that's camouflaged, so we're going to put the earth and rocks back on it after, and then have a door with stairs leading down.
And for what purpose?
Well, this is for safety.
It was to have a cooker, a bed, racks of canned goods, enough to sustain the 3 women for up to 2 weeks. A survivalist's dream. The one thing no one seemed to know was when the criminal case would actually get adjudicated. When would Jasmine face the charge for her role in this tragedy? As Dickie told us, Belize's courts are badly underwater. Even major cases can sit idle for years. One Supreme Court session came and went with no trial date chosen. Jasmine would sometimes ask me if I knew when the date might get set. This would likely come out of a smaller pre-trial appearance. I was astounded to learn that these announcements were not always made publicly. Hippolito told us that the court often just posted them on paper every Monday when it was in session, except for weeks when it didn't. And there were myriad reasons this could happen, one of which is
Belize is not a real place.
The more time passed with no court and no court date and no regular contact with Dickie, the more that Jasmine and also her mom assumed some surprise had to be lurking out there. Some nefarious thing must be afoot. Louisa had her own concerns about the criminal case.
We're very worried about it. We're extremely worried about it. We know that they're going for the jugular, that they want her to do time. And, we're really afraid that if they get her back into jail, she'll just be hung or shanked. And she won't come out, whether it's 3 weeks or 3 years. That's the real fear.
You think they're the forces are that dark?
Yeah, I do think the forces are that dark. I think it happens all the time here.
So dark that they might tamper with evidence?
When I got the disclosure and I saw that they took 1 bullet from the scene, put it in the gun, I reached out to Edward. It took a leap of faith, and I was like, hey, do you remember if there was any ammunition? And he said that, yeah, there was 2 rounds found on the pier and the gun was empty.
Next week on White Devil, Jasmine preps for trial. So we go back to the scene of the crime and unpack what really happened that night on the pier.
Under the shade I flourish. Under the rocks and stones.
White Devil is a production of Campside Media in association with Olive Bridge Entertainment. The show was written and reported by me, Josh Dean, with the series producer, Joe Barrett.
Desert island, all alone.
The story editor and sound designer is Mark McAdam, who also provided original music. Additional sound design by Joe Barrett. Studio engineering by Ewan Leitrim-Ewan. Our closing theme is Under the Shade I Flourish by Chris Halton and New Manhattan, including Eli Carvajal, Ava Carvajal, and Louis Cherniavsky. This episode was fact-checked by Sarah Ivry. Additional research by Emma Siminoff and reporting in Belize by Hippolito Novello. Artwork by Anthony Garace. A special thanks to our operations team, Doug Slaywin, Ashley Warren, Sabina Mara, Emma Siminoff, Destiny Dingle, and David Eichler. Campside Media's executive producers are Vanessa Gregoriadis, Adam Hoff, Matt Scher, and me, Josh Dean. At Olive Bridge, the executive producer is Will Gluck. If you enjoyed our show, please rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It really does help other people find the show. And here's a thought. Maybe tell a friend to check out White Devil while you're at it. Anyway, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
So, Robert, tell the people, what's a pretendian?
It's just what it sounds like, Angel, a pretend Indian.
Pocahontas, she of the great tribal heritage. What tribe is it? Let me think about that one.
Someone who fakes being one of us?
Pretend Indians are all over the damn place. You can't get away from them.
Someone who impersonates a native.
And we're not talking about the college girl who wears a feather headband to a Halloween party.
No.
We're talking about real scammers and con artists.
My 6 children with blonde hair and blue eyes, they all have their Indian card.
There are pretendians teaching at universities, pretendians running governments, pretendians in Hollywood.
For years, Danielle Smith has claimed that she has indigenous heritage.
On our new podcast, Pretendians, we'll tell you the incredible story of these jaw-dropping frauds.
The people that don't believe I'm native, they can kiss my Indian ass.
Who are they? Why do they do it? And how the heck do they keep getting away with it?
Listen to Pretendians on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're enjoying White Devil, follow Campside Media for more thrilling investigative series, like Suspect, Chameleon, Witnessed, and Hooked. Just go to campsidemedia.com/join. That's campsidemedia.com/JOIN.